Today we're diving in deep into spiritual bodybuilding, a powerful approach to aligning your mind, body, and spirit. Get ready to activate your true potential. Welcome back to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Dahya. Today we have Nahum Vizakis on the podcast interview today. He has been in the EOD operator in Iraq to competitive bodybuilding and now is an entrepreneur and business owner. He's been fascinated by how we can cultivate a champion mindset, and he's written over 2 books exploring these very topics. Today we have a truly unique guest who embodies this journey of self-mastery and holistic well-being. He's here to share his practical guide on spiritual bodybuilding and how we can all win the game of life. So Nahum is a warrior turned healer, a holistic biohacking coach, and Kambo practitioner. His unique journey has seen him shift from doing to being, emphasizing on listening to our bodies to guide our decision making. He believes that all answers are within us. Nahum masterfully combines Asian ethogenic medicine practices with modern technology and biohacking, offering a holistic approach to understanding the mind-body connection and to imbalance and disease. He guides individuals to heal through heightened awareness and profound behavioral lifestyle changes. Nahum's mission is to awaken the embodied sovereignty in men and women, guiding them through the indigo flame and path of courage, healing, strength, and spiritual embodiment. Welcome, Nahum, to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast.
Thank you, Anthony. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Nahum, take us back to your childhood and tell us your journey. How did you get here?
Man, my childhood was tumultuous from the get-go. It's interesting. You said, warrior turned healer, but I actually kind of feel like a true warrior is the healer. They're two sides of the same coin. They're one and the same, because true empowerment, true evolution comes through the soul, the spirit, right? You see, back in ancient civilizations, the Chinese, the Genghis Khan times, when they would go into battle, they all had rituals and ceremonies for their warriors to cleanse and clear out all of the effects of that war. And we don't do that in modern times, but what I see is a revival of that process happening, as we see with the reemergence of psychedelics and plant medicines and different ways to be able to cleanse the soul. So my journey really started in trauma, in difficulty, in really just unconsciousness, not knowing where I was going, what I was doing. I don't really remember a whole lot from before I was about 7 years old, but from what I could piece together, my mom and my dad, they separated early on. And even when I came out of the womb, I was jaundiced with a double hernia and 3 weeks premature. And as I went through the process of childhood, I was a runaway. I was such a nervous wreck. I had a stutter. I couldn't even talk. I dropped out of high school. Like, I bounced around in foster homes for most of my teenage years. I didn't really feel like I had a lot going for me, right? I even joined a gang when I was 17. And after I dropped out and I was doing the whole gang thing, I just burned all my bridges and ended up being homeless again when I was about 18. When finally, I called my mother after not speaking to her for 5 or 6 years. I was in Massachusetts. It gets very cold in the winter. And I was like, look, I'm going to either die out here on this park bench, or I'm going to come home. I was like, so it's not really much choices there. Can I come home? And she's like, well, we got to think about it. But after they thought about it, I was on a payphone. They called me, or I called them back like 10 minutes later. They're like, yeah, we'll come pick you up. Where you at? So I went home, got my GED. I started working and making money. And after I was at home for about 3 months, they're like, all right, you got yourself going, but you can't stay here. So you're either going to go to college, get a job and get an apartment, or go in the military. Pick one. And first I was like, I'll just get an apartment, right? So got an apartment. And all kind of bad things happened. I was hanging around the wrong crowd, bad stuff, and ended up a whole bunch of my friends started selling drugs out of the house. Cops were watching it. It was all a bad thing. So at my job that I had, I was a cook, and I ended up getting a really bad burn on my ankle. And so I was out of job, out of work. I had nothing going, and that was right around the time 9/11 happened. When 9/11 happened, I was like, well, you know what? I might as well join the military. Like, I got nothing else going for me in my life. So as soon as the ankle healed, I went, did the ASVAB, started the process, and I went in the military. And once I joined the military, I finally realized that I was good at something. First time in my life, right? I realized that I was really good at physical fitness. And so I was like, well, it made me feel really good about myself. It gave me some confidence. So at that point, I was like, I want to go all the way. I want to be all hardcore, really badass. I want to go to Ranger School and be special forces and all that stuff. Well, the way that I joined wouldn't allow me to do that at first, but eventually I was able to get a slot in the EOD. So for your viewers, if they don't know what that is, that's the military bomb squad, right? So
Mhm.
that gave me a foot into the special operations community, which was, once I'm in there, then I have a lot of options where I can go within the special operations community and do some really cool stuff. So fast forward to 2009, got deployed to Iraq, and it was my first deployment as a team leader, in the special operations field. And something hit me out of nowhere that I did not expect or could not anticipate, because I had never had a reference point for it. And that was, I came face to face with like the possibility of death. I was holding the IED up in my hand, and I realized that I could die if somebody calls this, a phone number. And suddenly my body did an autonomic response that I didn't really expect or know what it was, right? I froze. And after that, I started to have a bit of a identity crisis, right? It was an existential threat, to my life.
Mm.
I had kind of made my identity as an EOD operator. So things started to kind of snowball, from there, and things got really bad. I started to really self-sabotage myself in a lot of ways. And so I realized that around that point, that was the end of my military career, really. And so I started my process, my focus on shifting out of the military. And right around that time was when I found bodybuilding too. Now, bodybuilding became sort of my focal point of grounding me into my daily life, because again, it made me feel like I had control and I was actually really good at something. So as I started shifting my mind and shifting my life in the direction of focusing on bodybuilding and shifting out of the military, I really wanted to understand my mind and understand. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I was around all these other guys that were also dealing with PTSD, TBI, all these different, difficult situations. And once I got done with the med board process, I got out and I went to college, for psychology. And I started learning about psychology, and that helped, a little bit. And, my left brain was firing pretty good, and I was figuring some things out. I was really, really strong going in my bodybuilding career, but the school didn't really give me what I guess thought I was looking for. I couldn't find what I was really looking for. So I decided to make a shift, an adjustment in that, and I decided to go to massage school because I figured, hey, like most of my friends are personal trainers, being in the bodybuilding world, right? So if I'm a massage therapist, I'll get all their clients, and I'm already really good with the body anyways. And I know, like, I'm an athlete myself, and it'll work out really well for me. So massage school was pretty easy for me, but what I did not expect and what I could not have anticipated, this is the sort of next level of an identity crisis, was about 2 months into massage school. As I'm going about my processes, the one thing that we do when we're in massage school is we do call getting into our beingness, which is really just slowing down, taking deep breaths, relaxing, connecting to the person that we're going to be working with. So
Mm.
up until this point in my life, I've been in fight or flight, right? I didn't have any
Mhm.
reference point for it. I didn't even know that I was there until I had the contrast. So I started slowing down, started relaxing. Mind you, at this time in my life, I was 250 pounds. I was huge. I'm 220 pounds now for a reference point. Okay. So I started getting these really weird headaches, like, and they got stronger and stronger every day for about 2 months, till finally one day it got so bad that I just want to bash my head into the wall and like knock myself out. It was terrible. I was actually going to go to the hospital when my partner that day that I was working with was like, "Hey, can I do some body work on you, and see if I can help you out?" I was like, "Yes, please." So he just gently put his fingers in my CV4 joint, which is back here at the bottom of the cranium. And when he did that, it shot me out of my body. And I thought that, hey, maybe this is an acid flashback or something. I did a lot of acid when I was a teenager. And I had no idea what was going on, but from the outside looking in, it looked like I was having a seizure. And this went on for about 2 hours in front of the whole
Wow.
class. And so after I came to, I asked the instructor, what is going on with me? What is happening? And he explained to me, kind of laughing at me, actually. He was like, you just had the most intense SER I've ever seen anyone have. So for your viewers, an SER is a somato-emotional release, which contains the process of fascial unwinding. So what this meant, right, was that I was coming out of fight or flight, for after a lifetime. This is 34 years of trauma and, protection. So I was finally learning and starting to regulate my nervous system. And once it got to a certain threshold, all this pent up, stuck, protective emotion, it had to go somewhere.
Mm.
So it literally started coming out, and it was so dramatic because I had so much muscle, right? All this fascia was literally just recalibrating itself at the frequency and vibrational level. So it wasn't a seizure. Hallelujah. Thank God. But also after that point, I started to question everything. I didn't want to lift weights anymore. I didn't want to be with my girlfriend. I didn't want to eat the same foods. I didn't want to, like, nothing that I used to do, like, tickled my fancy. I had no desire to live my life the way I was doing before, but the same time, I didn't know what I wanted to do now. So I was kind of in this void space, right? So now I'm questioning what is going on. And so I decided just to focus my energy on doing body work, right? Getting clients and building my business and whatnot. Well, I started manifesting these clients that actually kind of became my teachers, helping me understand I'm activating my inner child, and I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm connecting to energy. And I still didn't really experientially understand it, but I started to, this is my birthing process of really understanding my superpower, which really turned out to be empathy, right? So next step in that process that really changed my life and brought me into the next level was about 6 months after that experience. I got an offer to go sit in an ayahuasca ceremony. And when I went to go sit in the ceremony, I did a little bit of research. There wasn't a whole lot of information about it back then, but Joe Rogan did a podcast on it. And I listened to that and I was like, oh, so this is going to make me have to surrender. And I don't know what that feels like. Right. So I was terrified, but I was like, you know what? I know that this is going to teach me something that's critical to, me getting to where I want to be. I was trying to get to this place. I was chasing this feeling. So once I went into that ceremony, right, I was terrified. Heart's pounding out of my chest. I'm like, am I going to have a bad trip? What's going on? How am I going to do? And then finally, this warm, slow, relaxing, soft feeling just came over me. And I felt this presence that was so kind and so gentle. And it was like a voice in my head. It was like, it's okay now. You can relax. You can surrender. You can let it be. And what I discovered was this was the first time in my life that I ever felt the frequency of love. And when I felt that, that is what I had been chasing my whole life, but didn't know. At the same time, this brought in a question. I started questioning my entire life because up until that point, everything that I thought was love wasn't. So what was it, right? I started to realize that all my abandonment, rejection issues were all just in this big cesspool of emotional attachments that I had thought were love. But you can't learn love through education. You have to learn it through experience. I credit my first ayahuasca ceremony to learning to understand what that felt like. But then that just opened a whole new, metaphysical can of worms in my life to, now go into this new world that I was just so thirsty and hungry for more knowledge and to understand it more and to dig deeper and deeper. And this is where I really discovered like connecting empathically to energy and how to interpret that energy and how to help and support other people that are going through difficulty and trauma. And that was the start of really up until now, about a 13, 14 year process of diving into that psychedelic healing space, but also still maintaining my bodybuilding philosophy and lifestyle and incorporating all these new processes and systems. And also the biohacking world was being birthed around this time as well. So I started learning and working with and eventually teaching all these principles, these alternative processes like phase contrast microscopy, like ozone therapy, different kinds of chiropractic work, craniofacial release, how the body and the mind are connected, the interconnectivity of the fascial system with the nervous system and all these different, components and proponents. And I went from ayahuasca, then soon after that, I started working with combo, and gut health started to become a real major priority to the point where I brought all these medicines, all these biohacking technologies and techniques, and all my experience with trauma and working and helping, other people with trauma, especially veterans, to creating my own system of healing and processing where I combine the philosophy and concept of physical or biological imbalances with their emotional counterpart. There is always, what I've learned from all my work, the most important fundamental part is where there is a physical imbalance, there is a corresponding emotional imbalance. And when we address the emotional component to it, then that is where we're able to truly heal. But the problem is a lot of people will heal a physical injury or a physical imbalance, but they never address the emotional part. So then they get looped into this process of going out of balance, fixing it, coming back, then going out of balance, rinse and repeat over and over again. So that's really the main focus and function of everything I do when I work with people, is helping people understand where they're blocking themselves emotionally. And once that's understood, and then they make the lifestyle changes, because typically there's a lifestyle change that has to happen. Like, case in point, I was talking to a client of mine today, and he had some really strange anomalies in his blood work. And I started breaking all these things down. He's like, well, I got to be honest with you. I kind of drink a lot. I was like, well, you know what? That would explain all these symptoms very easily. And there was a threshold point there. And it was kind of reality check, like, oh man, I need to stop drinking. But there's some kind of emotion that he's afraid to feel, right? And when I made that correlation, he's like, yeah, I know what it is. I know. I've been avoiding it and I've been lying to myself about it. And we all do that, right? But so it's really important to, sometimes you need to have a little bit of a reality check. And when your body is not running on all cylinders like it usually does, right? And you're trying to figure it out, when you look at any kind of biomarkers from any testing and you incorporate that, you really realize, wow, it is that one missing component that most people don't address that is having a cascading effect that's actually
Yeah.
creating all these problems. So
Yeah.
you have to make a sacrifice, right? You eliminate that problem, then you make the lifestyle change, and the feelings will naturally come up and come out during that process, right?
Mm.
And then that's how transmutation and alchemy happens.
Yeah. Wow. What a journey.
Yeah.
And I can relate to a lot of that around abandonment, rejection, and
Yeah.
also
Man.
looking for love in the places where instead of looking internally.
Yeah.
My journey hasn't been through plant medicine or ayahuasca or anything like that, but it's been really doing the shadow work, getting comfortable with the emotions. And as you said before, you're suppressing a lot of things. You got to let that all come out, and it's an ongoing journey, isn't it?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not just a one-off thing. Um,
No, but I also kind of feel like the natural chronic initiation that we go through as we evolve and grow, that's what keeps us humble. It's a good thing.
yeah, being humble is so and so important because your ego can get in the way.
Well, the ego is limited in the sense that the ego is there to protect us, right? But
Yeah,
when we're always feeling like we need to be protected, then we don't open ourselves to new unknowns, new possibilities, new opportunities. Because sometimes opportunities can come into our lives that don't look like opportunities, right?
yeah,
They look like trouble. They look like you had to have to end something with a friend, or they look like a requirement to have a new boundary that you're afraid to communicate, right? Something that you're hiding from yourself that has to be addressed. And the world is it's our playground, it's our oyster, but it's also our school. I like to call it Earth School, right? And when we stand in our power, in our self-confidence and self-worth in a humble way, and we address these things, it's almost like addressing the internal conflict from an outside source. Because
mm,
really, let me know if you resonate with this or not, but a lot of times any external conflict is actually just a semblance of something that's going on within us. So
100%.
you've had a bad day, right? And then suddenly, your mother or your sister, like, I don't know, like, just walks by, "Hey, can you take care of that for me?" And then suddenly all the stressors that you went through the day, "No, I can," and you like freak out on them, but they just got the brunt of all this pent up emotion that you haven't dealt with throughout the day, right?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Everything that's happening externally is a representation of what's happening inside. It's a mirror of what's happening inside.
100%.
And we create our reality. Our thoughts, our emotions create our reality. So, and actions as well. So we've got to get aware of what's happening for us. And I think a lot of people, like, I mean, I was like that for years where I wasn't aware of what was happening because there was patterns appearing, but I wasn't actually being aware of them or taking much notice of them. But
Right.
then when I started to do that, then all of a sudden you could see that this has been happening over and over again because of this reason. And
Hindsight is always 2020, right?
I didn't go to the army or military or anything like that, but as I mentioned in the discovery call, I did spend 6 years in an ashram in India, which was literally cross between army and prison. And I went through
Wow, man.
abandonment, rejection, sexual abuse. I was sexually abused as a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old actually. And so
Sorry.
all of that stuff it builds up, right, in your life. And if you don't deal with it,
100%.
if you don't process it, then it's going to keep you stuck.
Yeah, well, from an energetic standpoint, what you're saying, this just kind of popped in mind as you were saying that. From all those hardships and all those difficulties, right? I call it soul fragmentation, where
Mm,
when it's really bad, a piece of us has to go somewhere, right? We just kind of disconnect, dissociate. And over time, especially when we're a child, we're innocent. We don't have the tools to be able to deal with that, right? So it gets embedded in our central nervous system. And with each time that happens, we go farther and farther away from the present moment, right? And then everybody hits a point in their adulthood at some point in time where now it's time to come back. You have to come back. But in order to do that, you have to learn without knowing where it's going. You have to learn how to feel these feelings that come up that are buried in your nervous system. And it's like, unless you have a guide or a coach or something, you typically have to go through some pretty dark suffering to finally just get to a place where you don't have any choice, but you have to surrender. And once you learn how to surrender, then would be considered soul retrieval or like soul recalibration, right? It's like putting a broken vase back together again. But in Japan, they have this process where they actually use gold and they put like a broken vase back together with gold. So then the bringing it back together actually creates a beautiful, more valuable new masterpiece. And I think that's kind of like a good metaphor for this process as we start to learn how to pick up the pieces from those damaged parts, and we learn what it need to teach our soul at the soul level. We mature, we grow, we learn what we actually really love or what we're actually really born to do. I believe, and let me know if you think the same, but I believe that everybody on earth right now is here for a purpose, for a reason, right?
100%.
Yeah. And when we step into that purpose, that reason that really is based in love, right? We're all bringing each other back home. And back home is just to being fully present. Being fully present, that's when you process everything real time. You manifest things real time. Everything comes through real time. And if you're in real time, that means that you're at some level of inner peace.
Mm.
Right? And I think that's what we really like. Everybody's trying to hustle and make $1 million so that they can just go buy a house and be all set so they can live in peace. But the whole way that we've been trained to do that is so backwards, right? So that's why, and I think we're having a revival in humanity right now of coming back to understand these very human concepts of coming back to ourselves in this lifetime, in this present moment, and learning how to navigate these processes so that we can live the rest of our life in peace instead of waiting till we die to
Yeah.
go to a better place.
Yeah.
Now, granted,
I mean,
that'll probably happen, but I think we want to do it now. Like, at least that's my philosophy, right?
yeah. I mean, we're here to remember who we are. We're here to remember
Yeah,
that pureness of the essence of who we were when we were
right.
born. And everything that's happened up until at this point has been conditioning, programming. It's been a system.
Yeah,
So we've been blindly following the system that's telling us this is the way to live, this is the way to do stuff. But the minute you distance yourself from that system and step back and start to go internal and start to look into yourself and go, what everything that's happening for me, what's happening inside that's causing this to happen? It's all cause and effect, right?
right.
The more we become conscious and collectively conscious, because we are all connected, we are all part of the universe, and the more we start to consciously raise our vibration from the lower frequencies to love.
I think lives,
I don't
brother.
even I don't even have the word for it, but it's like that's when freedom. That's when you actually are
Freedom is a
really
great word.
free, right? That's what's coming to me.
Amen.
And what you were saying about being in the present moment, for me, it was like back in maybe 3-4 years ago, I was constantly anxious, and I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and that just changed my life because I was like, if I'm worried about the past or the future, that's just future anxiety, right? It's just fear of the future. And also, I'm looking back and holding on to things that I don't really need to hold on to. Um, and as Dr. Gabamoto says, you had a traumatic situation with the experiences of abandonment and rejection, but holding on to that, the emotion and the feeling of that is the trauma that we're going through. It's actually, we're actually creating our own suffering within that, right?
Yeah, yeah, ain't that the truth?
So the more we stay present and realize that in this present moment, everything is okay. And I don't know
Right?
what's going to happen 5 to 10 seconds from now, right?
Yeah,
We're shifting identities, we're shifting ourselves. So the more we just stay in the present moment, that's where we get that freedom from all of the stuff that's holding us back, and it's ourselves that are holding us
yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what the great thing about, like, nowadays, now that this, like, whole biohacking industry is getting so big and there are all these modalities and technologies that we can access, right, to be able to voluntarily go into these fear-based places. Like, case in point, right, any fear that's outside of the present moment is essentially a fear of the unknown, right? You don't know what's gonna happen, so you can't control it, and the mind wants to be able to control things out of that safety, out of that protective dynamic. It's a push and pull, like a tug of war or a Chinese finger trap that is constantly being held in this. But when we voluntarily say jump into that cold plunge, right? That is so uncomfortable, right? Like you got to do some breath work before you get in there, and it shocks your system. But when you make it to the other side and your body comes down from that initial shock, it jumps your dopamine up to 400%. It activates the immune system and will heal you super, super quick. And you feel light, you feel powerful, you feel grateful. And not to mention that you just agreed to yourself to do something difficult. And because you followed through on doing that thing difficult, that actually dramatically improves emotional resilience, which is really what we're looking for here.
Mm.
And
Mm.
everyone has different things that are uncomfortable, whether you're claustrophobic or whether you're just a super nervous wreck, you need to really relax and like float, go in like a float tank, or you don't like heat or sweating, right? Or you need a detox, you don't like to puke, whatever it is, the thing that you have like a phobia, like this fear against, go do it. And if you're afraid to do it by yourself, bring someone with you that has experience with it and then trust that guide to help you walk you through it, right? I
Yeah.
think that we are living in a unique time now because 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we didn't have these things, these outlets, right? And now so many people, we have a society that addiction is the norm. Sickness is so commonly accepted that a healthy person is the exception. That is scary. I mean, we have, I think right now, what, 1 in 3 children have autism? I mean, how are we gonna have an adult society in 30 years if all these adults, that's a third of the population. They can't do jobs, they can't work, like, it's gonna be a society of people having to help and support these other people just to live. We're in a crisis state, but I do believe that with all the medical advancements, I think I'd say probably within like the next 5 years, they're gonna have some kind of medical treatment or intervention that's gonna help to turn around, these terrible diseases. And I mean, I think we're getting pretty close now, actually.
Yeah.
But I mean, that kind of needs, if our species is going to survive, we need to figure that out, right?
Yeah. The question I ask is, where is autism and ADHD and all this coming from? I was talking to a friend yesterday, and like she hasn't been in touch with me for a couple of months now, and she said, "Sorry, I haven't been in touch because I've just been working through a lot of stuff." And she said, "I'm chronic autism and ADHD," and she's now been put on Ritalin, and she says that there is no cure for autism. So
I
surely
don't believe that.
Surely this is coming from some sort of internal unease, right? Or dis-ease, should I say?
It's so, from what I've learned from all my research, autism, biologically speaking, it's a severe lack in microbiome diversity. We have trillions of bacteria in our gut, and that there is a severe absence of certain bacteria that activate certain components to neurotransmitters and immune function that also affects brain function. But not only that, then the deeper question is, well, what is it that's creating that lack of diversity? And all my research, I found it's heavy metal toxicity and poisoning from vaccines as the primary source of the problem, right? And if you look at the scheduling of vaccines from 30 years ago till today, you'll see that there is a direct correlation to the rise in autism, to the rise in the amount of shots that children have been getting. And so I myself was vaccine injured when I was in the military. Like, I mean, they just shoot you up at all kinds of stuff when you get deployed. And I came to learn, actually, when I took my microscopy course was when the PhD instructor that created the course and taught us about this, they had been studying that and identified that about 10 years prior. But of course, it's such a political thing that people were denying that these things even existed. Well, as I really started to detoxify, I mean, a major part of my work with these plant medicines that I work with, especially with Combo is an excellent medicine for this. They detoxify and clean out all the heavy metals, which also invite in parasites and fungus and mold and yeast. And you see every third person also has some kind of gut issue, whether it's SIBO or some sort of overgrowth or some sort of malfunction in the way that things are processing in the gut. All these allergies, sensitivities to peanuts. Do you know that they use peanut oil in the MMR vaccine for a couple years in the mid 80s? And it's all those kids that had that MMR vaccine with the peanut oil that generated peanut allergies. And I can go on for days with different lists, ideas and things, but the heavy metals that they've been putting into our bodies that are now being affected by 5G, right? Because we are electromagnetic beings, and all these heavy metals, they're interacting with these wavelengths, and that's a big part of what's getting us sick.
Mm.
And I have a whole system implanted thing that I'm using in a wellness center that I'm building right now to create sort of a Faraday cage effect with a 0 point central hub that's going to create an environment that'll actually bring the central nervous system back into homeostasis, because these frequencies actually throw the central nervous system out of alignment, and everybody's nervous system is fried, right? And we're being taught in these certain ways that our mind is not naturally supported to do, which is where I think the ADHD comes into play, also with the heavy metal poisoning. But and neurodivergence, I personally believe it's kids have a certain natural tendency to want to play, to want to move, to want to color and create, express their creative potential. But this day and age, school does not feed that, nor does it promote it. Like nowadays, everybody's so scared of all these bad things happening, they can't even go out and ride their bikes down the street and build a fort and, do all the things that we did, when we were younger. I think that is a big problem and a big part of it as well. But it's a combination, a smorgasbord of all that. And that is a technical term, by the way, smorgasbord of all these different poisons, all this different programming, all these different systems that are in place that are fighting the very human nature that we have to do what we need to do. But here's another problem too, is that there's a major epidemic of victim consciousness out in the world too. And people where, doctors become doctors, we're supposed to trust them with our health. Well, it's becoming clear now that you can't really trust doctors, because the way that they were taught was only to profit big pharma. So now everybody thinks that they need Ritalin or need Adderall. I myself jumped down that train too. I was on Adderall for about 8 years. That was one of the hardest things for me to get off of, because it hijacks your dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. That's what gives you, energy, right? So they're literally giving you amphetamines, like a modified version of crack. So, and when you're a kid, that's also going to modify your hormones. It's going to modify your, the processes in way that you function emotionally, right? Everything is designed to make us dopamine addicts. Everybody has a phone right now, right? So you're on Adderall, your dopamine is sky high. Now you're just feeding your dopamine, filtering through social media all day long now. And now kids wonder why they can't get off their phones. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to play. All these kids are walking around with this almost hunchback these days, because all they want to do is sit around, play video games, scroll on social media, and take their Adderall. It is a system that's designed to destroy our youth. And we need to take that back. Like men, I feel like everyone's being tested right now, right? But I feel like they've really attacked the masculine man out there in the world, right? Because if the masculine man of a country, of a society is weak, then who's going to stand up to the powers that be, right? To hijack the control dynamic. And this is where I'm like a massive proponent. When I'm working with these medicines, we put our phones away, we all come together and we interact, we all cook food together, we all clean up together, and we all go in these vulnerable spaces to heal our stuff together. It creates a certain level of camaraderie and community that I think that needs to be reintegrated into the daily habits of, society. We are interconnected species by nature.
Yeah.
But the dark forces out there are promoting isolation, right? Like you can just go on an app and get DoorDash and have your food and all the things that you need delivered to you. You don't need to leave your house, right? It's very sad, but I also think too that it's getting to the threshold where it's tipping, and people are starting to stand up and wake up. But it's the belief that you have something wrong with you and that you need this medication because you have this diagnosed thing that makes you not okay being you. That is the deeper psychological programming and problem that we need to address and fix.
Yeah, 100%. I've been told for years, "Oh, you've got ADHD." Okay, I've got ADHD.
Right.
And to me, it's like, okay, if it's my superpower. I love what Simon Sinek says, because he says, "Yep, I've got it, but it's my superpower."
There we
But the
go,
thing,
man.
my daughter, she's 12 years old. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, uh, sh her mum took her to get checked out, and she got diagnosed with ADHD, and she got put on some sort of medication, and she's, like, really bubbly, and she's like a mini me effectively, really out
Okay.
there and extrovert, and I saw a change in her, like, literally, she would be like,
Man.
and I'm like, "That's not my daughter.
Oh, that's so
That's
sad.
someone else." So what she eventually, like, she wasn't on there for long at all. It was probably maybe a couple of months or so,
Good.
but then she came off it and she refused to take it. So
Uh,
she's just a different kid. She's different from other kids. She's unique. That's all it is. And
that's it,
so
man.
yeah,
And then you have to feed that creative desire within the kids, right?
yeah,
So I think a lot of people are doing homeschooling nowadays if you have the ability to, right? Like, that at least gives them an opportunity to, try things in a, outside the systemic norm fashion. And did you know that even down in Florida, the state pays the parents, what was it, I think $800 a month
well,
for a kid to be homeschooled?
yeah.
And they have whole
So
community set up with it and everything.
yeah, so my daughter was homeschooled for 2 years. Her mum's
Oh, it's
actually
not
mum's actually a teacher.
wow. Oh, there you go.
And we decided that for that period that she was, where she was at the time, that school wasn't actually serving her. So we homeschooled her. And it's only this year that, only like 2 months ago, that Olivia came to us and said, "I want to go back to school." And because she was getting bored and also she wanted to, be with her friends. So she's back at school now and she's happy. She feels that she's doing better because she's been out of the system and had the support to help her move forward. Because the other thing is everything in the system it's structured, right? The government is structured. The school system is structured. The work environment is structured. And I've been having this conversation with a number of different people who have been on this podcast is around, so the government tells us the way to live, and it's a system that we have to live in. I don't subscribe to that. So I do what I have to in terms of paying taxes and so on. But other than that, I don't want a bar of it. And the school system is, again, it's basically a daycare for kids, right?
It's an indoctrination system too.
It is an indoctrination system, and it's like it's teaching the system so that when you finish your school, you can go into the adult system, right?
Right,
And
yes, exactly.
yeah, yeah. And then when you go into the working world, again, you're in a system. Now, the other thing is, I was talking to my latest episode that I published. I was talking to a lady from HR, and I said, "Well, every person in an organization is unique, is different. They're all going through. They've all been through trauma. They've all had different experiences. They're processing themselves at different levels. Some people are not even aware that they've got things to process because they're
Yeah,
just on autopilot, right?
yeah,
So
it's crazy.
then you go into a team situation and the manager expects everyone to be the same. How the hell does that work? Exactly. But for me, what I found was that being in the corporate world, being in that structure, actually, for a while, I wasn't realizing what was happening. But when I did become aware and I started to realize, I realized that made me feel like I was in prison. So because I was in an ashram for 6 years, which was barbed wire fences, it was cross between army and prison. My experience of a job became a
It
prison,
came right back up.
right?
Yeah, that'll do it, man.
So
That also
after
gave you an opportunity to move through that stuff too, right?
100%, it's like,
Yeah.
24 restructures, 4 redundancies, to finally come to the conclusion, I'm not meant to be here. Yeah, so that's when I started the podcast, almost 3 years ago. I'm quite interested in your perspective of the whole COVID situation. Tell me what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, I knew right from the jump that it was all a game, it was all bullshit. So, in fact, that particular day that they announced everything on, January 12th was a very significant astrological aspect in the sky. So, I correlated that, but I had felt like something was coming for a while, and actually about 3 weeks, I think it was the week of Christmas in 2019, I got really sick, And so I think I had COVID before they even announced it or whatever. It was like I had a really hard time breathing, but I also had like, flu, like for like a week I was out of it. But once I had it, I never got it again, man. I was good for good. And because of my experience with vaccines before that, and then suddenly this mysterious thing comes out, they shut everything down. Honestly, I had the greatest time of my life during that. During,
Me too. Me
during
too.
being it was like, like there was underground, like in the gyms, right? All the gyms closed down. So I had a couple friends that own gyms. I'd just like, hey, bro, we want to open up for a couple of us. There'd be like a handful of us there, blasting the stereo, all hanging out, having a good time because most people that really understood that was just present and like they knew this was crap. They knew that it was something that needed to change, something was happening. All the drama with politics and Trump and everything was all super hyped up. What I liked was, like, all the disclosures and all the information that was coming out, and because I had been digging into this stuff for years already at that point, but what was really freaking me out was how many people were falling for it, and some of the people that I thought never would've, gone for that actually did. It really shifted my understanding of how this programming works, right? I feel like I really came into my own. I was trying to, like, convince people and tell people, like, hey, this stuff is poison. They're putting some kind of shady stuff in there and don't take it, get away from it. And I ended up getting like most of my business was online and I got shadow banned for, because they were, not letting people talk about it at that time. And that kind of messed my business up, but it also pushed me in a direction that, I guess I feel like I needed to go. And I was just totally being me and really I was loving life. At the same time, I was doing a lot of research and a lot of digging and understanding what this new thing that they were doing and, to bring out was and really studying human consciousness. It was a really great time to just see how people respond to fear. And if I'm doing this, I can only imagine like the scale of what other people are doing it. But I thought it was a great opportunity for people to grow and learn. I saw some of the greatest transformation processes in people's lives around that time as well.
Yeah.
But man, that jab, it brought in a whole new philosophy on how they deliver drugs, period.
Mm.
And now, messing with DNA, like you just don't do that, right? When I was competing in building and stuff, right, I was enhanced. I'm not like above par or anything for putting things in my body to grow or if it's something that's going to benefit me, but this is different. This is something that's changing you at the very core of who you are. And I think actually coming out here in the next couple months, I think a lot more information is going to be coming out about exactly the depth of what this is really doing to the human genome and where it's going and potential, longer term health, implication that it's going to have.
Yeah.
And I'm super grateful that I didn't get it, but I do feel for a lot of people that did because thankful none of my family got it, but I do have some very, very good friends, that did. And, it's, everybody's having to face their own thing their own way.
Yeah. I never got COVID.
Okay.
Yeah. In my immediate family, my daughter, my ex-partner, and I never got it. Olivia had a very short stint of COVID, but her mum got the long COVID thing. In terms of the vaccination, we chose not to vaccinate our daughter, so Olivia was
Beautiful.
not vaccinated. I had to get vaccinated because I worked in a local government. I don't know what it was like in the States, but here in New Zealand, if you were working for a local government business organization,
Yeah, you had to get it.
you had to get it, otherwise you would lose your job.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know a lot of people that did lose their job.
Mm,
But then other people, that's a really tough thing thinking about. I got a family, I got kids to feed, I got all this stuff, responsibilities. Like a lot of people got packed in a corner, and it was for some people it was an impossible decision. For me, I was grateful that I created a situation in my life where I didn't have to make that decision. But now, on the flip side of all that dark stuff is that I also think that a lot of really brave scientists and people have discovered ways to be able to clean it out of your body and fight the spike protein and do all that stuff. So I do believe that there are, if not now, very, very soon, there will be technologies that do help to clean it out and
clean it
save
up.
it. And I also feel too, so there were three different variations of the formulations that they made with the different companies. And I know there were some that were actually given some placebos. Who knows? Maybe you got really lucky and actually just got a placebo.
Maybe, I
Yeah.
really didn't feel any effect of it at all.
No.
It didn't affect me in any way at all. So maybe I just got a sugar.
Maybe,
Got something
maybe.
placebo. Yeah,
But I do feel, and this is diving deeper more into kind of conspiracy theory land. But as they're shifting from 5G to 6G right now, the graphene oxide in particular, that particular heavy metal, is very sensitive to certain frequencies that they're putting out there. And I feel like there's going to be some kind of hive mind effect as they activate and turn on these frequencies. So that's something where just detoxification consistently is just a really good thing to keep your body as clean as possible, because whenever that does happen, whenever it comes out, I think we're suddenly just going to see millions of people that are just suddenly like zombies,
yeah,
but we'll see.
yeah. I want to ask you, could you take us through a little bit of the whole postural assessment, the microscopy, the vibristic therapy?
Vibroacoustic.
Yeah, I can't even pronounce it. My goodness.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
okay.
some of that just to get an understanding. People be going, "What are all these things that you're talking about?" Could you explain to us, please?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I actually I have a few other pillars of diagnostics that I work with initially, but the biggest thing is a postural assessment, right? I've been doing that for a long time, about 12 years now. And so I bring people through an assessment of their physical body and whatever physiological imbalances, of course, you got to take into consideration any surgeries or any knee hip replacements, right? Things like that. You jumble all that information into actually feeling the physical body and seeing where things are off. And just based off of physical of the physiological assessment alone, that helps to show where there are some fundamental emotional blockages as well, right? The body holds on to emotions in all the different areas, and they all have a different meaning. But I also combine that with the microbiome test to see what bacteria is there, what's not. Just like we talked about the autism thing, how the diversity of the bacteria can tell a lot about what's going on in the human body. And then I also add in blood work with just traditional biomarkers to see that. And then we bring in microscopy. So microscopy identifies the behavior patterns of the terrain of the blood, right? We're looking at how the blood is interacting with its environment. And that is also a direct parallel correlation to how we emotionally interact with our environment. Right. So when we make all these connections, I mean, you'd be surprised. Some of the things that are just put together from this analysis, people would just be like, oh my God, I was riding my bicycle when I was 6 years old and I fell and I hit my tailbone and that created this imbalance. Then I broke up with Susie Homemaker like 3 weeks later, and the craziest associations that you can imagine. Now, once we have those associations and those correlations to the imbalances, right, then I bring people through different biohacking modalities in order to be able to correct those imbalances, right? So I also do different kinds of body work, but fundamentally, we can do it biochemically and we can do it physiologically. And these are all tied into the emotional components. And when the emotional characteristics are in the awareness in the present moment, that is when it'll actually leave the body and clear out.
Mm,
And so that really is the differentiating factor that truly creates the healing. But so we have, like you were saying, vibroacoustic therapy, which is essentially it's a zero gravity chair that vibrates. It's like think of like a vibrating massage table, sort of, right? And we utilize binaural beats or other types of music that really it's a hack that allows the central nervous system to relax about 90% faster than if you didn't have it. So that alone really helps to relax the body. And the longer you lay there and you settle into it, you can even go into very deep, like meditative states. Your theta waves start to become very active, alpha waves become very active. So that's really the fundamental approach to relaxing the central nervous system. Then we have other detoxification protocols like the Hocket, which is a 10-in-1 ozone infrared steam sauna, right? So the ozone mixed with the PEMF and the microcurrent, really the PEMF goes into the body and you're in like a pod, right? So it's a sauna that has ozone in there and also carbonic acid. What these things do is they break up the tissue through the microcurrent. So they're shocking you open, right? While the carbonic acid goes in there, it's basically carbon dioxide. That opens the pores and allows the ozone to seep deeper into the body, right? And then, of course, the sweat, it's pulling all of it out of you all simultaneously at the same time. And this is a very, very, very powerful tool to detoxify, to break up stuck tissue, like where and we have stuck tissue wherever there isn't blood flow, right? So that pulse electromagnetic frequency really breaks open some stuck tissue and gets the blood flowing in areas that have not had blood flowing in there. And then as you clean it out of your body, it's amazing how fresh you can feel. With the ozone too, it surges your body with oxygen. So it kills off bacteria, fungus, mold, yeast, and then anywhere that is oxygenated in the body, cancer cannot live either. So any kind of anaerobic fermentation you may be having in your body as well is going to be neutralized. All right. Then we have like red light therapy. Photobiomodulation is excellent for a multitude of different things, but actually helps a lot with depression, anxiety, seasonal affective disorder. It activates vitamin D processing. It activates collagen regeneration. There's different kind of wavelengths that will hit different parts of the body, but you can even combine that with methylene blue. And the methylene blue attaches to pathogenic bacteria in the gut and kills that off, which, by the way, pathogenic bacteria or parasites are actually the fundamentally responsible for almost every autoimmune disease out there and many other issues. Even sometimes cancers, tumors are actually just bundles of parasites, like parasite eggs that have had white blood cells come around and not protect it. And, doctors didn't even, acknowledge these things until just a few years ago. But wavelengths, frequencies, these different devices, there's another device that I have called the live stream generator, which is 0-point frequency technology. So what this does is 0-point frequency is really the ultimate optimal frequency that a cell can vibrate at. The way that it was explained to me one time is, we live in an oscillating polarized density, right? So we have negative and positive, right? So say a car is going and it's going to go fast enough to where it can break the speed barrier. Well, when it hits that speed barrier, there's a sonic boom, right? That boom is because it reaches a threshold where it shifts into a new level, a new phase, right? Well, that sonic boom threshold would be considered the 0 point, right? It's where suddenly it shifts into an entirely different level, but at that space is where there's no more polarity. It's no more isolating. It's now the vibration is so incredibly distilled that it is literally sitting still. And when that happens in the biology, right, the cells push out toxins or anything that's not aligned with the DNA source code, and then it invites in nutrients that the cell needs. It like calls out to what it needs, and the body will provide it with whatever it needs in order to have its like 100% charge, if you will. So I call this the human battery charger, where you sit with this device and you get infused with this 0-point radiant energy. What's really interesting about that is that after a few minutes of sitting with this thing, your body will naturally exude ozone out of your body. It's pretty wild stuff, man.
That is interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the general, basic gist of all the different tools in my toolkit that I use to be able to help people heal from all manners and all types of dis-ease in the body.
Yeah. A friend of mine, she's a spiritual healer, and she's got this device called the Healy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's Rife technology.
Yeah.
Nice.
Back in 2024, I was going through doing shadow work for 12 weeks, and
Okay.
I was a little bit financially worried, and I said, universe, I need a flatmate because I've got no income coming in. Well, 10 minutes later, I get a message from her, and she says, do you know anyone who's looking for a flatmate? I'm like, yep. So anyway, she comes over and she stays with me for exactly 12 weeks. And within that 12 weeks, I did the shadow work. And I was sitting through every single suppressed emotion, feeling, everything that was popping up. I was working through it, right? But what she was also doing is she would put the Healy on me, and it was reading my subconscious as well. And she would give me a reading and say, this is what's happening. I would then take that information and then I would look at working with them and doing things like grounding myself, going out there onto the earth and just grounding myself and being in the sun, meditating, going to walks on the beach, staying in the present moment. But she also said, we're not going to have this conversation tomorrow. So she kept me accountable. And so there were,
man.
Yeah, so that was a form that I've used before that actually helped me quite a bit. So I was going to ask you, so like what you were describing before, like with that device, you can also achieve that with effectively meditation as well, right? Because if you get into the right state of being, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this, is that, he has people that come with all these illnesses and they go through this meditative state where we're basically going and changing the DNA.
Yeah.
And the minute they release and let go and surrender that stuff, they no longer are the person that they originally came, they've
Absolutely,
changed.
man.
Yeah.
I would say it's definitely possible, but this, like, so if someone has never meditated before, right? As soon as you get on this device, you can't have a negative thought. In fact, you can't even really, it's like you don't want to think.
Wow.
You just want you it's like the feeling is so good. You tune into the feeling going through your body and you cannot have a negative thought. It's a super hack to go like almost immediately into like advanced meditation
Yeah.
without even having any practice. But of course, it would be prudent to be able to take that experience and then work on it outside of, using the device.
Yeah. So how long would that person be connected to that device, and how long does that process take?
I mean, a typical session is about 20 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
And, so I know for me, when I did my, initiation process, had to do it 20 minutes a day, every day for 8 weeks straight. And I'll tell you what, man, like, a lot of the benefits and effects that I felt from that was the same benefits that I felt I got from plant medicine, just slower and more consistent. So plant medicine is like a, sledgehammer to your consciousness, and you have this blissed out experience or a really difficult experience, and then you have to integrate it. Well, this is like you're doing the integration while you're clearing it out simultaneously, slower, right, but more gradual, right? So, because I believe, I mean, was it Albert Einstein or Tesla said that that if you want to think of the future of medicine, think in terms of frequency and vibration.
Yeah.
I believe the future of medicine is frequency and vibration technology because at our core, that's what we all are, right?
Well, we are
So when you
energy.
go to the
Yeah.
frequency, you just reverse engineer the process, and then that'll clear because at the frequency level, any dis-ease or any tumor or any issue in the body or the mind, it's all frequency based. There's a frequency to everything.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like, I mean, I've done a lot of work on myself, right? I don't feel worried about the anxious or any of that stuff. I feel like I've done the work, and don't feel stressed or anything. But there are still things that I know that I'm aware that there's something still I need to release, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think that that's as long as we're alive, there's always something. But I do believe this is my just personal opinion. I think that we cross thresholds
Yeah.
in life. So, like you said, you feel like something's in the background or something needs to move through, but it doesn't really affect you. You're being the conscious observer of it. And then, after a while, I know for me too, like if stuff's going on, I'm like, all right, well, when it comes up, right? And then you let it take its course. You let it take its time and do its thing. And I noticed that as it gets closer to being able to be released, it'll get stronger and stronger in my consciousness, or I'll start having weird dreams, or something will start to happen where it gets more visceral. But that just means that, okay, I know it's coming, I know it's moving through me, as opposed to when you start this process, it starts to come up, it hits your central nervous system, you freak out, you don't know what's going on, and then you stuff it back down because you believe that this is like something that is not good, you can't handle it, danger Will Robinson, right? So once you learn how to surrender into that process and allow it to teach you and really be present and the conscious observer, that is the key, man. That is the tool, that is the trick, that is the if you don't learn anything else or try anything else, the fundamental process and goal for moving through the human condition, right, which is going from fear to faith, in my opinion, is becoming the conscious observer, knowing that you're going to be okay, allowing things to move through you, feeling the fear, and then allowing it to leave you. When it leaves you, then the clarity, the understanding, the lesson that you had to learn, it comes through in divine time, not in your time. And then you rinse and repeat. And the better you get at it, the more flowy life gets.
Yeah, 100%. I think you mentioned this earlier about if there's something that you have to say or that you're holding back on. And I'm in that space right now where there's actually something that I've got to have a conversation about with a person about. Maybe the tenseness in my body and things like that I'm feeling is because I'm not releasing that I'm not speaking it out. And so that's just given me a prompt of like, hey,
Oh, man.
I'm being present. It's like I've been thinking about I've got to have this conversation. I've got to have this conversation. When's the right
Yeah.
time to do this? And yeah, there's no time like the present. So it's like you've just got to do it.
Love it, man. Good. Go get it.
Actually, one thing I wanted to ask you was the integration of the ancient in the entheogenic. Is that medicine
Yeah.
practice? Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The similarities and differences between the 0 point frequency device and having a plant medicine experience. That's like kind of sledgehammer to your soul and it kicks everything out. But then you got to kind of like come back down to earth and integrate and slow yourself down. It's a little bit like a roller coaster, whereas the 0 point, it's much more, it's slower, more consistent, and you're kind of doing the integration work while you're doing the inner work as well.
In a world where often value constant action, achievement. This shift can be challenging, especially for high achieving people.
Uh-huh.
What does being in a state look like in a practice for your ideal client? And what are the common obstacles that they encounter when they are trying to embrace it?
So this is an excellent, excellent question because we are still meant to take action while being present. I think a lot of people get confused with, well, I can't just sit there and be kumbaya and meditate in a cave for the rest of my life. I got to live life, right? It's not about sitting back and not doing anything. It's about the intention behind why you're doing something that you're doing. What I've learned with working with a lot of my clients, a lot of people have this super hustle and bustle and got to be busy 24/7 and got to push, push, push and drive, and they get burnt out. They start having health problems. Like, you can't sustain that. So it's really a shift in prioritizing what you go into and making some sacrifices. So say a lot of really successful people in business, they sacrifice their relationships. Their relationships are terrible. They have difficult relationships with their children, and then another case is they'll start to have significant physical issues or medical issues that they just start popping pills, taking stuff, and just pushing through. The pushing through, that's the problem. When you're present, right, you go more into a consistent, actionable flow state.
Mm,
So this may mean, okay, I don't need to make $100,000 this month. I can make $87,000 this month, but I'm going to schedule more time into my wife, my husband, or I'm going to schedule more time in with my kids. I'm going to make sure that I'm getting to bed at the same time every night. Like, I'm going to stop my working at this time and schedule it and keep it consistent. Or if there's a real physical or emotional crack that's starting to show, I need to schedule time so that I can immerse myself into my healing and then schedule my time back out so that I can continue to moving through. But really, a lot of times what I see is when people start to make a lot of money, then they start to get afraid they're going to lose that money, right? So they push more than they have to because they already have plenty. They're taking care of their kids, they're doing their due diligence, but there's a component of fear in there. So it doesn't matter how successful, how hot your wife or your husband is, or how like much or little like you have going on. Everybody has some kind of fear that they're facing. And in different chapters of life, you will come up to different types and levels of fear. And as we grow bigger, more influence, more power, more money, more whatever it is, will be the corresponding, depth to how difficult or big the situation is. So the key is, and the fundamental focus that I help people focus on, is to identify the fear and to identify when they're forcing something, because there is a threshold there, right? They're not always forcing something, but if you feel like you need to get this deal done in a week when you really could take about 3 weeks to do it, or if you take on this extra project when you really don't have the space for it, why are you overburdening yourself? What is the lesson within that desire to overdo it,
mm,
right? Because you find that you're still gonna, like, if you've already become a vibrational match to having a lot of money, having a great relationship, having, whatever it is that you might have, then you're not gonna lose it per se. In fact, you're probably gonna attract it easier, more efficiently. But you want to have peace and you want to be happy and learn how to enjoy these things of abundance that you have.
yeah.
And to this day, I think I've met one person I know that's a billionaire, and he's the kindest, most humble, solid, present guy that I know. He is an example of what I strive to be every day of my life.
Mm.
Most other people, they're just compensating. There's narcissism, or there's Machiavellianism, or there's some kind of ego stroke. And I'll tell you what, it's the millionaires that have something to prove, or that they have this deep fear because they have a lot of money. They convince themselves that they don't need to do the inner work. And those are the people that scare me the most,
Mm.
because they have so much proof in their life, and then they start to feel like they're better than other people, and they judge and they do this and that, and it's so unhealthy. But they are the most unreachable
And
because
they're also
who am
unhappy
I
as
to
well.
tell them? What's that?
And they're not very happy either.
They're never happy. No, but they convince themselves that this is the right way to be, and this is like, I don't know, like the attitude of Andrew Tate is kind of like a prime example. He's not happy, obviously, and he spent a lot of the way he made his fortune was from objectifying and manipulating women. That's just not ethical, moral. It's not a good person, right? And he teaches young guys to be strong and be man, be alpha. That might work for, like the people that have no identity, or people that don't know who they are. They feel weak in their life, but that's not being a true man.
Mm.
A man has love in his heart. A man wants to be able to take care of his wife, his kids, his family, right? Like, you got to learn to balance the things that really matter to you, because you can do all this stuff alone. But you know what's going to happen when you're 90 years old? You're going to be dying in the hospital bed alone. You might have a really fancy schmancy, like hospital bed or something, but you're going to be lonely. And then you're going to be in that place in your life, and you're going to thinking about that, the back in the day when you could have done this, you could have done that, you made all these mistakes, and you're going to be filled with regrets, and you're going to die alone and wishing you did things different. There's also another saying out there is you have to die while you're alive to truly live. And on one hand, in the Christian world, you have to be reborn to invite Christ in your heart, to have Christ lead you. You can say that another way, like in the psychedelic world, where you have to have an ego death. And I've had many, but
Yeah.
you have to die to your superficial identity to open your heart and live from that more, the place that is really more you. But we trick ourselves into believing that our ego identity is us. But that's just our scared little protective device that we cover so that, we can go after the world's desires. And that's really hell. I mean, there's no two ways around it. You're not present, you're not loving, you're not kind, you're greedy, you're going after money, power, and respect in all these dark ways. And that's going to end up catching up to you.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how many things that you've accomplished. You've been the best or the worst or something. We're all human. And in our humanness, we're all the same. Right. And we all need to help each other out to, because we're all one, we're one big community, and we want to make this, we want to save this world. Really, we all got to come together as a community, and the good people with the good hearts have to get these leadership positions to be able to, start changing the laws and the rules to things that actually work for humanity as opposed to working for profits.
Yeah, 100%. Agree.
All right.
Yeah. And as you said before, you've got to die to your old self.
Yeah.
You got to change. Nothing changes, and nothing's going to change. So you've got to die to yourself. And as you said, you've got to be born again. You're leaving all of that behind, and you're starting in this present moment as a new being. The idea of being yourself and that state of, how does that connect you back to your core philosophy of all the answers that are within, and how does it empower individuals to make decisions that truly serve them from the highest good?
Yeah. So coming back to yourself remember that example I gave earlier where when you're young, you have to disconnect from yourself and dissociate, right? So that brings you farther away from the present moment. It gets you trapped in the future in these stories that we create in our mind, right? So true happiness, true abundance, true wealth, true health is when all the stuff that's inside that we were avoiding, we have to come back and deal with internally. And so really it's the same process for everyone, just a different road to get there, right? And once we do that work, which there are many ways in order to be able to voluntarily step back into those places, as you shift, you do die to your old self. These old selves have belief systems and philosophies and theories and behavior patterns and ways of doing things that were serving that false self, right? So we have to stop feeding the false self. And each step we take that we get closer to our true self, which is really opening up our heart to love again. Because the present moment is in the heart. It's not in the mind. And then the heart goes into the driver's seat, and then that's when we feel at home again.
Hmm.
That's what everybody really wants, right? To feel at home living your life one day at a time.
Yeah.
It's such a simple process, but it's just not easy because fear makes it complicated. And fear is false evidence appearing real. However, that false evidence is encoded into our nervous system. So once we understand how it's affecting our physical body, right, then we just have to agree to ourselves to move through the discomfort. And sometimes that discomfort can get so deep, so dark that you feel like you're actually going to die. And a part of you might have to accept, I might die. But when you come to the other side, you realize that it wasn't a physical death, it was an intellectual death.
Then on the flip side of that, you face everything and you rise, just like the phoenix from the ashes. So
absolutely. Phoenix rises from the ashes, baby.
So you got to feel that fear, and you just got to rise up from it.
Yeah. And that is where the true warrior healer archetype becomes alive, because that's really healing yourself, right? And when you do that, your heart chakra, it emanates out, 40 feet in all directions? So that energy affects people in your environment, right? And your light will piss off some demons, man. Right.
Absolutely.
So, and that's just going to show, like, anything that's chaotic or out of alignment or not in the heart vibration, it's going to get triggered. And then you have to make a decision to continue to move in the space, in the direction of your light, of your presence, and not let that shit pull you back down, right?
Love it.
And that's it, man. That's the secret sauce, baby.
That's the secret sauce. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we're at the quickfire round now, but before we do that, I want to ask you, tell us about what you're doing, how you're helping people, and how can they connect with you? What have you got on offer?
Yeah, man, cool, thanks. So, level number 1 is you can get my books, and, that gives you the basic foundation idea of, things that I've wanted to educate and teach the world about my philosophies, how I do things. So I work concierge, people one-on-one. I can do long distance or in person as far as coaching, and then I do diagnostics. I work with, do medicine ceremonies, and I'm just a trauma specialist. I help people heal from trauma. And like we've been talking this whole time, bring people back into the present moment in their own unique way. I am in the process of building a wellness center so that I can expand my ability with these protocols and these modalities to really get deep down and help a lot more people a lot faster. So that's in the process of being built and manifested. I'm hoping within the next 6 months that'll be ready to go. You can go to I have two websites, optimizinghuman.com and spiritualbodybuilder.com. I'm also very active on my Instagram, spiritual_bodybuilder. You can basically just Google spiritual bodybuilder and I'll pop up there and go ham, man.
Yeah.
Have
How many
a great day.
how many books do you have?
Well, technically 4 now. I just wrote another one. It's about the detoxification process and the emotional components to the detoxification processes and how to optimally navigate that. And then I wrote another book about 10 years ago called Decrypting the Language of the Human Body. And then, of course, I have my 2 published books. These other 2 books were just like PDFs, ebooks that I, promote online. I'm about to put that detoxification book on my Optimizing Human website. So that'll be for free, actually. All you got to do is put your email address in there and you'll get it for free. So you can look out for that. And then, of course, my 2 other books, The Biohacker's Guide to Spiritual Bodybuilding and The Indigo Flame, are available on Amazon.
Awesome. So if you send me those links, what we'll do is we'll put those in the show notes.
Okay.
Also, because you get a dedicated page on the Champion Mindset Collective, all
Well,
those links, all the books will be showcased promoted on there as
fantastic,
well.
brother.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, man.
And there'll be the videos, there'll be an article written from the transcript, and also a practical guide, which is basically a distilled version of the transcript and the article into a 3-page guide that people can learn about everything we've talked about today. They can reflect on some reflection points, and they can actually also take some practical steps in their journey right now. So the idea is that you listen to this episode, you read the article, you download the guide, and start making change in your life straight away.
I love it, man. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
All right.
right.
So, quick fire questions. Are you ready? You can answer these in a single word or a short sentence.
Okay.
How do you define success, and has that definition evolved for you over time?
Inner peace. And it's changed a lot over time because I used to feel like success equals how much money you have, the type of, girl I had on my arm, or like how jacked I was, and all these different external validating factors. But that was just my ego. So now I've come to the point where success to me is inner peace.
Who's been your greatest inspiration and why?
My daughter, when she was born, she just cracked me open. She has taught me so much without even realizing she's taught me anything, especially about my biological father and my stepfather. Both, one was absent and then one didn't treat me very well. So learning how to be a father has literally changed me in ways that I could have not even anticipated or understood before she was born. So she's my greatest inspiration. And close second would be my girlfriend, Ty.
What is something that you believe that others may disagree with?
I believe that Christ consciousness is now flooding the planet, and I believe that we have the ability to be like Christ.
If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Let it go, man. Stop trying so hard and just be you. Let it go.
What is one message you'd like to share with the world?
Find your tribe and live in your peace. Do your inner work. Don't let the world tell you who you are. Make sure that you discover who you are one day at a time.
Now, before the next question, I want to ask you, what is your favorite mindset quote?
The one thing that comes to me is slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
And the last question for you is, what does it mean to you to be a champion and have a champion mindset?
Doing the inner work every day.
Love it.
That's it, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Nahum. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I had, it's interesting, you come with a script of questions and it was out the window. It's like,
man. We just, I like to let it flow anyway, too. You and I flowed really well. We got into some really, really, really dangerous topics there, but I really liked how we were able to bounce off each other. So,
well, it's only dangerous if you're fearful.
Very true. Very true. I like that.
Thank you for sharing all the gems and also your wisdom and activating us all to step into our embodied sovereignty. To our listeners, remember that the path of a champion mindset is an ongoing journey of growth and awareness. So it starts with awareness. Until next time, stay curious and keep cultivating alignment within. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share this with someone and subscribe. And lastly, I just want to say you are loved, you're worthy, champion your life, champion your greatness, and have an amazing day.